brochure, magazine, and so I don't need to go into reading anything, but to say that it is truly a great honor, a pleasure, and a privilege to be able to say that CVL is proud that we have such people who have made the kind of difference that they have made in our lives, into our lives, and that we are thrilled to honor them today and add to the basis of their material immortality with this event. So I think I will then proceed. I believe that we have run their introductory documentaries. We have two not documentaries. One is an introduction that says who they are. And then subsequently, we run a full documentary that we have done on each of the honorees. Sometimes it becomes a stretch for time. We then make these available online so people can continue to view their contributions online. I think that the heart of this meeting usually is the colloquium, the discussion that we have that focuses on the path of the lives of the people we honor. Dr. Sarah Jibril obviously has dared very much in the territory that a lot of men have tried to make a monopoly area for many years. And Nigeria is a country that does very poorly, sadly, in women in politics. Again, I've frequently spoken about the challenge of inclusion and give an example of the fact that Nigeria trails most African countries, not just the world, in the number of women who are in positions in public life. Rwanda has made such incredible effort that we see, I mean, each time, I think I've given that example from this podium before, each time I travel to African Union meetings on trade and investment in Africa, this young woman from Rwanda who is their minister for trade and investment, I believe it is. And I look at her, I say, smart, pretty, but I can provide you 10,000 like that in Nigeria. Why are they not here? Something is wrong with the way that our politics has been excluding, and we must correct that if our society is to get where it deserves to go. And so Dr. Sarah Jibril has not only been active in politics, but has come to it from a perspective of what politics needs a lot in our country, ethics. And so, again, it's a thing of pride to be able to say that today we visit law, we visit politics, and very importantly, we visit enterprise in honoring Mrs. Funke Oshibodu. We have a panel that will engage in the conversation. The panel includes a number of people that we know and respect their views on some of these matters of inclusion. We have, Thelma Ekio, who's been in a bit of an accident. So she's being represented by Mrs. Weimi Eribo. I don't know, is she online or is she physically here? Oh, you're welcome. Please come and join us here. We also have on the panel Professor Felicia Monye, who I believe is joining us online. We can see the profile of the panelists in the brochure, so we can get to familiarize ourselves with what they bring to the conversation. And we have Mrs. Funke Adekoya, SAN. Do you know that with these masks, you can't, I didn't recognize you. I didn't realize that was you. Thank you so much for coming. It's a great. And then we have joining us online, Professor Fabian Ajogu. And then there's Professor Ige Bolodeu. I can't. Yeah. Huh? Sorry, ma'am. The writing is not so clear, so I can't. Yes. Yes. Okay, Professor Yumi is representing Professor Bolodeu. Bolodeuku. Oh, okay. Sorry, ma'am. Please. Apologies. You're welcome. And let me say something that happened completely by accident. It was not planned. One of my favorite criticisms of law is offered by a Frenchman called Bastiat. I'm sure we know. And I don't know, I was trying to pick up something to hold to look at if time is being wasted. And I'm looking for what's the smallest thing. I don't want something bulky. And I picked up Bastiat. So I'm going to probably go at some point to it, since we have such powerful lawyers here. Go to his thoughts on the matter. So thank you all so very much and welcome. But I'd like to begin our conversation by asking our panel, is there something in the culture in Nigeria that makes inclusion a big challenge? I mean, this is not just gender inclusion, it is young people being left out of most things. I was in Abuja a few days ago, a major discussion of how Nigeria should move forward. And the average age present at that meeting was 70. For a country whose average age is probably closer to 20. And I raised the question there, why do we not get inclusion in Nigeria? And for women, this obviously is something that is so very evident because we have so many capable women. In fact, one of my favorite stories to use to kick this off, somebody said to me years ago, these days you go to a convocation, commencement, and they go first class, and all the people being called off are girls. Second class upper, and everybody's, then you hear a boy mentioned, and everybody goes, yay! One boy has managed to get 2-1. Happened to the girls. And the boys are all in front. What's the problem? Why are we there? Perhaps I should start with Mrs. Adekoya, SAN. Please, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Prof. And I'd like to start by congratulating today's honorees who are eminently deserving and, in my own humble opinion, long overdue. And I congratulate CVL for picking them out and for the topic of today's discussion. But I'd like to take a different perspective. You have looked at it from the point of view of inclusion. I think before we get to inclusion, there's something before that. I'd like to quote Vanna Myers. Vanna Myers is the VP of Inclusion Strategy at Netflix. It's a social media platform, but it's not Twitter. So I think I'm allowed to, I'm allowed to watch Netflix and to inclusion is being asked to dance. So I think what we need to start from is whether women are being invited to the party, whatever that party is. Against that background, I think there is a cultural issue why women are not being invited. And I think that cultural issue are the social obligations that African societies generally put on women. We do not have the social networks or the social systems that exist in the West. So we provide our own daycare, we provide our own housing support, we provide for our elderly. So women are both wives, mothers, sisters. I always say that women would get ahead faster if they also had wives. Because we also have that system, there's a sense of exclusion from education. And that's the first level where women have to compete. Where resources are scarce, parents, at least many parents in the rural areas, feel the little resources are available should go towards educating the man, because he has an obligation to take care of a family at some point in time. The woman is going to be a support to some other man. I'll stop for here, but I think that's where we need to start from, that is the cultural barrier that stops women from entering the workplace. Before we get to the inclusion point, there's no diversity, or there's limited diversity.
Thank you. Let's continue with Mrs. Eribo.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's fantastic that you would, bring that line in. I think when he was speaking, the first thing that came to my mind was a story. So the work that we do is around impact investing. So basically, we support female entrepreneurs here in Nigeria. And so a story came to my mind very quickly about a girl who I will just call Tinu, who started a business. She's based in Benin and started a leather belts business, right? And she was making these leather belts with local fabric and everything. Business was growing very well. Decided to go and do a proper business plan, got her financials intact, and started looking for investment opportunities. And then Tinu finds a group of investors in Lagos who are interested in her sector of business. She travels all the way to Lagos, gets into the room and meets 4 men on the panel. And she starts talking about her business, talking about her figures, her financials and everything that regular investors will be interested in. And at the end of her pitch, they told her, unfortunately, we cannot invest in your business. We're not ready for you. And so this brings to mind 2 things. First thing is the very unconscious bias that a lot of us have, especially investors, that we do not recognize. Unconscious bias in terms of, like what she said, oh, she's a woman, she'll get married, she'll have children, she'll not be able to focus on the business, right? And there's the very conscious bias of investors just believing that male representation of their investments is a better option for them. So there are a lot of biases that I've seen in our culture, a lot of them, in terms of education, in terms of, you know, women running businesses. People believe that a woman has no idea. I mean, for the longest of times, men have been the ones running businesses. And so you're in a room where you're talking business with men, and they just assume that you don't know what you're talking about. Obviously, the women have not been exposed to as many mentors. We take very easily the Igbo mentoring system, where Igbo, you know, they get your younger ones, get them trained, apprenticeship, thank you, the apprenticeship system. You will not find any woman who's basically gone through that system. And so when you want to talk about business to women, you're also talking, you want to talk to people who you feel already have an idea of what you're talking about. So from the very onset, women have not been allowed into these conversations. Women have not been, in fact, when they're even talking businesses, they'll tell them, excuse us, right? I'm also from a family of men. Initially, at some point, when they're having some kind of family conversations, oh yeah, the last born, you can go, right? So it's already there. But gradually, you're growing and you're beginning to prove your worth. You know, you're beginning to prove that, okay, I have something upstairs. Then they begin to invite you in. So we've gotten to that point where women are beginning to get invited in gradually, but there's still so much to be done.
Well, thank you very much. I think I have to go to a man now so that we get a different perspective. Professor Fabian Ajogu, SAN, what's the issue? Is it the ego of us men? Is it the patterns received through centuries of, why is it that we are sub-optimizing? Because when we do not use optimally a significant part, 50% of our population, we obviously can't compete with those who are using 100%. A perspective.
Thank you very much, Professor Tommy, and I'm delighted to be here. I congratulate the honorees. Yes, I am delighted to be here and congratulate the honorees. And it's precisely the choice of the honorees that I would take a point of departure from the introduction. Take a look at the honorees. They're people who have distinguished themselves and broken the glass ceiling of their own hard work and merit, and not because we want to include them. I'd like to throw a little spanner on the expression inclusion. Inclusion suggests that we're being merciful and gracious upon them. They're actually entitled, they're already in. And that takes me to the point about recognition. So take a look at an institution in a country like United Kingdom, Oxford University. It was Annie Rogers who had embarrassed men in 1875 when she finally took the degree exams in Oxford as the only candidate, and she made a first class. And Oxford University was wondering, how do we now give a degree to a woman? And sadly, they denied her the degree. It was 40 years after, in 1920, that they gave the first woman, Annie Rogers, a degree. What I'm saying is that women already depict excellence. The challenge has been recognizing them and not graciously admitting them. That's what I'd like to say. So it's the bane of our society to not recognize these women who have already distinguished themselves. And I'll give you an illustration. Chief Folake Solanke, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, who CVL had done the good thing of honoring her, like our today's honorees, was teaching Latin and mathematics, the same courses that Annie Rogers did a first class in Oxford. He was teaching Latin and mathematics in the United Kingdom in the 1950s, a Black teacher. That was a recognition of her excellence. And I think any society that fails to come on board, it is its own peril that it doesn't recognize them. So I'm not one to advocate, let's just include as though we're being kind and gracious. I think there are women who have won their own first by their own merit and by their hard work, both in the audience, the high table, my learned friend of the silk, Mrs. Adekoya, wears the silk gown of her own merit. The legal profession doesn't need to include her. She's already in. So that's the point that I'd like to make. And I think it's something we need to do more of as CBL directs our attention to it. Thank you.
So very much important points to make there, but staying with Oxford, by the way, and perhaps not to hold Nigerian men in such bad state. So it's not just Nigerian men, it's been world over for a long time. I mean, Oxford was that mean. And they continued with Margaret Thatcher. I think Margaret Thatcher is the only Oxford graduate that became prime minister that they failed to give an honoris causa degree. And she, in my opinion, is the Britain of the 20th century. I voted for her over Winston Churchill because I think she saved Britain. So if this is not peculiar to us, staying with you, Fabian, what can we learn from how the West began to purge itself of that problem of not allowing women? I mean, I've heard people argue in Britain, for example, that you see the problem of women doctors is that you invest so much money training a doctor, and then she goes off to have children and takes off from medicine for 10 or so years. By the time she comes back, you literally have to completely retrain her. Still, we have seen the West increasingly accommodate for roles in society, for society, in society's good. What can we learn from what they have done for changing the way things are in our own country?
Thank you, Professor. And I think the question directs our minds positively to what the West has done. What the West has done is purely recognize merit and encourage it, reward it, celebrate it. And that is one of the things that we need to do more of. The minute you shift from an entitlement society, a quota-based society, a federal character, whatever that means, driven society, to begin to recognize merit, meritocracy, then you're on the path of redemption. And as you rightly observed in the beginning, you'd find even in my law firm, about 6 or 7 out of 10 applicants who have just been called to bar are females. And we have to come to that realization that their competitiveness is becoming more and more visible. Women are more resilient. They get mature quicker than men of the same age. They have so much to contribute that our society is the one in loss for not recognizing this. And I think we need to borrow from the West to begin to emulate meritocracy as a way of redeeming civil society. If we do that, we would not be doing favors to women. We would simply be acknowledging their rightful position and making the very best out of it. So that's my take for what to learn from the West and even see how they hold political positions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. In fact, on that note of political position, which I will get back to, and maybe we'll get to you on that, we see some of the comments that have come out of how COVID-19 has been managed and how people give greater credit to countries run by women than to those run by men. So maybe these are things we could return to as we continue this. But let me turn to turning to Professor Yumi, turn to a reverse part of this. You know, I was scared for a state called Anambra some years ago because a friend of mine, Professor Peter,
Was that Twitter or NEPA ban?
My alma mater, University of Nigeria. And I was actually scandalized, I should put it that way, that a woman was now living in my room. I was scandalized, a woman was now living in my room. Almost every hostel on campus was now female. When I was at the University of Nigeria in 1973, there was only one female hostel, then it became 1.5, then it became 2. By the time I was living, it was 2.5. And so I go back after returning to the country, after grad school and all of that, to visit. And I find that almost every hostel on campus was female dom. And I was still in this state of scandal, of experiencing scandal, if you will, when I arrived in Enugu, and the military governor at the time in Enugu was a friend of mine, group captain, or Air Commodore as he became, Emeka Omero. And I went to visit with him, and I told him I was in a state of shock. I said, what was the problem? I said, the woman now sleeps in my room, because it was a joke. And he says, when he arrived here as governor, he was going around and he thought, what's happening? All the schools are female schools. And then he got to one, he saw 2 boys in the class. And he said to them, why are you 2 boys in a girls' school? They said, no, it's not a girls' school, it's a mixed school. And then one of them offered the explanation, and he's speaking in Igbo. He says that, his mates say that, before these people who are going to school will finish, he would have become limited liability. So what's the point in wasting the time going to school? And I said to him, my real worry was giving the male ego in our country. We will get to a point where all the people that can be judges, that can be palm sex, that can be anything, will be women in Anambra State. How are these men going to deal with it? So I guess things began to change, fortunately, I think, in Anambra in more recent times. But do you see this was we use inclusion threatening men or the male society in a manner of speaking?
Thank you very much, Prof. And let me join others in congratulating our honorees of today. I was just going to say, even before you asked the question, that in my close to 3 decades at the University of Lagos as a lecturer there, I have observed over time the change in the balance, as it were, of the sexes in the class. In the early 1990s, I joined in 1992. My recollection is seeing, a fair balance, maybe 50-50 or 60-40 in favor of the men. And I'm talking about Lagos anyway, but I guess that also applies likely across the country. But over time, I have now discovered that, in fact, just a few weeks ago, I was trying to divide my class into groups for an assignment. And I had to really make a conscious effort to be sure that, I had at least 1 or 2 boys in each group of about 8 to 10. That's the reality now. And sometimes I ask myself, what really is going on? It seems like we have passed the stage of parents or families keeping their girls at home and sending the boys to school now. For some reason, there is more awareness about the need to educate the girl child. Probably many families have seen the value of having a well-educated daughter and the support she gives to the family, even her family of origin, as well as the family by marriage. So for diverse reasons, we have more girls in school now. And they are performing excellently. as one of the earlier speakers said, the female typically is resilient, probably from the training at home, where you learn that, look, you can't just wake up and go to school. The way the boys, can, although again, that also is changing, because you're going to grow up, you're going to get married, you're going to run a home and all that. So girls have been socialized to combine roles and to do so effectively. So if you're caring for your kid sister, you have homework, you have to put the kid on your back or something like that. So you find that females are more resilient, and they bring this to the classroom, they bring it to their studies, and we see them coming out excellently. The boys, we have discovered, and I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but largely, take time to settle down. Sometimes by the time they're settling down, getting matured, it's second, third year on the average. And so we begin to think about it that, look, where is this really heading to? We're giving prizes, as you said earlier on, most of the prizes are going to the girls, not only in the universities, even at the law school. We're seeing a lot of that these days. And we know about the huge ego of the male. Even those who don't feel that way personally will have friends or family members saying, are you allowing, your wife to outshine you? And that puts a lot of pressure on the family at home. It puts a lot of pressure, on siblings and all that. So what really is the problem and what needs to be done? Let me say, however, that notwithstanding the excellent performance or the increasingly excellent performance of girls and their visibility, in schools and all that, I've discovered that from research that there's a form of reverse kind of discrimination that we see out there also, especially when it comes to gaining access to the workplace, as well as the circumstances and the conditions that women are confronted with when it comes to, being able to make it to the top. That's why we talk about, at that point, the glass ceiling. With regard to the issue of access, of course, there's the perception that, the female, she's going to go away, she'll go on maternity leave, she'll have many sick off and all that. But I think part of the challenge comes from the lack of social support or inadequate social support. You find that women who excel tend to be the ones who have a good support system. And I think that's what we need to be looking into, particularly now with the breakdown of the extended family system. We can no longer count on having family members coming over to help, to maybe support the woman during the early years of childbearing and child raising. But what can we do? What can be done? And that's one area where I would like to commend one of the honorees who served as the first female dean of the Faculty of Law at the University of Lagos, because she brought her own experience to that office. And one of the first things she did was to establish a crèche where women could keep their children. When you have your child in a safe place, where you can easily look in and make sure the kid is okay, you can work all day. You won't be in a hurry to go home or, to go back home. The women will concentrate better. So over time, we've seen more females, even in our faculty, joining the faculty. When I joined our department of commercial law, for example, she was the only female there. I was the second. And we had about 8 to 10 men, if my recollection is right. Today, it's 50-50. And it looks like very soon, the scale is going to be tilting the other way, because we have a good support system even at the workplace. So I think that is one of the things that we need to look into to ensure inclusion, providing a level playing field. It's not just enough to say, oh, women too, should be allowed in. When they get in, will they be allowed to perform? And not because anybody is hindering the woman necessarily, but because she's the average woman, especially the one who tries to combine work and family, is under tremendous pressure and needs support. The workplace needs to understand that. Government needs to understand that. So once we're able to put in place some measures to provide that kind of support, then we find that women are in a better frame of mind to do what they need to do. Also, over time, we've seen that there are some of the men whose views or perceptions largely revolve around the consideration of women as some of maybe the perks of their office. So increasingly these days we talk about problems with harassment. These are workplace conditions that may make the workplace intolerable for women. Again, there is a lot of awareness being raised around these issues now. Many workplaces now have, anti-discrimination policies, anti-harassment policies. Even our courts are increasingly sensitive to that, and by and large, we can see that the game is changing. So personally, I have never experienced that. Unfortunately, our own university is an equal opportunities institution with zero tolerance, for some of these ills. But you find that these are some of the challenges that women face, access to employment, and then favorable conditions or environment in which to thrive and excel. So that's my take. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think that, as we get more light, maybe we have prescriptions that can crystallize for making the terrain amenable for the advance of women in the workplace. One of the obvious things that come out of some of the comments is the nature of the sociology of the workplace and social, if you will, acceptance in determining possibilities for women. I gave the example earlier of Mrs. Oshibodu, who I said have been using to illustrate a number of things. Now, these, in our own particular example, I like to say, I don't know that I'm correct, but I extrapolate from. I used to argue that in her case, the social problem turned out to be an advantage. What was the social problem? Social problem, I think, was that men were in more of a hurry to reach the top, so to speak. And in an emerging professional area like banking, for example, there was a time when as banks were expanding, a young man would join a bank, and the other bank is starting tomorrow. He jumps to the next bank, gets promoted. Within 6 years, he will become general manager without knowing anything about banking. But because women didn't feel that kind of social pressure, Mrs. Oshibodu stayed in Citibank and truly learned banking, while people were flying around had become general managers in 6 years, and they were out, literally speaking. Can we look at how society perceives things and the sociology of the workplace in terms of how it has hindered, as different from this particular example I've given, that women being able to use the talents that they have to be more effective and to break that glass ceiling, as we now call it, to do things properly. We'll go back to Mr. Bikoya.
Thank you very much, Prof. I'd start by saying that, yes, there's been a change in education. So there's increased diversity. You're having more women in the universities. You're having more women being educated. Those are women in urban areas. We still have the problem in the rural areas. And to go back to Mrs. Oshibodu's example that you have given, I want to refer to a quote from Professor Marianne Bertrand. She's a professor at the University of Chicago. She says, talent is left on the table when women are not placed in leadership positions and the economy suffers. In banking, it's about the economy, it's about money. Therefore, talent will not be placed on the table. And therefore, plus the sociological issues that you have raised, so many banks have been established. Mrs. Oshibodu had an opportunity to rise and to shine. Her skills and her talent were acknowledged. And you see in the private sector, when Professor Agama became the dean, she established a crèche because she knew the issues that would stop women from fully showcasing their talent. So private sector may not be an issue. And in the private sector, women may be more easily available to break that glass ceiling. But let's go to Mrs. Jibril. Politics. The men are still in control of the political system that changes the legislations that Professor Yobi has referred to, that will enable a more conducive environment for everyone, male or female. And until we are able to grab that lever of power and break that glass ceiling, I don't see how. I'm very pessimistic. Or as they say, I'm an optimist. A pessimist is an optimist with experience. I personally have contested presidency of the NBA twice. So I know what it means to try and get power. Nobody hands it over. And therefore, a situation where there will be inclusion, where women will be recognized for their talents in the political arena, I have serious doubts. I don't see men legislating to give specific seats, number of seats to women, which will be one way of obtaining inclusion. I see positions where political parties. Well, Rwanda is a separate case. Rwanda, the women got political power because a lot of the men died in their war. That's the story with Rwanda. That's the story. So shaming them, unless the threats of what may happen will open their eyes and their ears to acknowledge that they should allow this question of, we're going to allow women to contest, they can take their forms free. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's a sham. So I particularly am not sure that the sociological situations exist in Nigeria for women to break the glass ceiling in politics. But in the private sector, those systems exist.
Well, thank you. I think maybe what I should do next is just get some reaction from the honorees to some of these issues that have been raised. Perhaps we can get a perspective from Mrs. Oshibodu. We've just been talking around what in your experience is at the heart of this matter. Since I've used your name in vain for a long time. Yes, go ahead. Now, unmute and then let's have some more volume. Let's see if it works.
I am currently using two systems. I am using two systems. Can you hear me? Can you hear me better now? Okay. So the other system is louder, but I'm not being allowed to enter through the other system. If you can unmute the one that says BDC, unmute for me, that you can hear me better on that one. I'm using, this is what you call limitation of technology. Thank you. Can you hear me better on that? Okay. Basically, I want to say that I align with most of what has been said for a couple of reasons, and it's quite interesting. Where you start from matters. That's very, very important. I think my starting from an organization like Citibank made a lot of difference in giving me the freedom in those early days of banking. And because Citibank was out there to change a lot of things in the banking sector, and I was at the heart of quite a number of it, I could make a difference. So the organization you start from when you are in an environment where it wasn't that easy, because at that time, not many people made a difference. Number two is the aspect you mentioned of the home front. For a lot of us women, at some point, it's difficult for you to continue for one main reason. You have so many things contesting for your attention. I always tell people, women are the best managers. Why are they the best managers? They can handle so many things at the same time. They've learned how to juggle things from when they were very young. And so men have a tendency to be more concentrated in their approach. Meanwhile, you carry baby on one hand, you are cooking on the other hand, you are doing something on the other hand. These are skills that at early stage, it's taught to you indirectly, and you can use it in the workplace. Unfortunately, very often, the ability to grow and truly break the glass ceiling when you get married largely depends on the type of spouse and the family you get married into. If you have a supportive spouse and a family, including his own family and your own extended family, things are a lot easier. If you don't, it's a lot more difficult. So that aspect made a lot of difference because my husband was very supportive. Because as you grow higher in your career, no matter how good you are in juggling, there's so many things that sometimes will suffer the work, and you must know how to balance the two. So I think we're not yet at the stage where, as women, completely, the system actually allows for you in terms of all the extras that you have to take place, that has to take place to make a difference to you. I think I'll stop there, but we have more women now, and there are more women breaking the ceiling, not equal to nowhere near the ratio of women and men, but it's progressing, and it's progressing reasonably well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, if you can unmute and then talk. Can you hear me? Okay, if we're having a technical difficulty, let's talk to Professor Gomo to make comments.
Thank you very much, Prof. I align myself with all the views that have been expressed. And I would like to start from what Soshigodu said, that where you start from matters, the beginning. And here, I want to go back to the issue of the girl child being given the same opportunity as the male child, because that also informs your worldview as you get into the larger society. I was fortunate that I was born into a family where there was no discrimination. Whether you're male or female, you have the freedom to go as far as you can go. That can become an issue where somewhere along the line, maybe you're married to a family where the exact opposite is the case. And so to realize your impact or your contribution, your talent or whatever, becomes something else. So many of the talents have been lost along the line because of this issue of being able to tread the right balance. You know, as a woman, you say, we juggle many roles. So which one suffers? Like I said, I grew up in the village where my worldview was limited, and I didn't see myself being an akada because the perception was an akada was a woman who could not stay under a man. And I did not want to be labeled an akada with that. And I thank God, thank goodness that I was saved from that limited worldview. But the problem we have, we talk of inclusion. I like what Professor Fabian Ajogu said, should we be talking of inclusion? When you talk of inclusion, like I said, are we talking about tokenism? Let's have a certain number of women at this. We are not doing women a favor. I would like to quote what Mary Robinson said, the first woman president of Ireland. She said that the cause of women is inseparable from the cause of humanity itself. And a society that is without the voice and vision of women is not less feminine, it is less human. And she said that on October 18, 2002, when she was making a speech to mark the 75th anniversary of the admission of women to Columbia University School of Law. The problem we have in Nigeria is the issue of thinking you are doing the woman a favor. You're not doing her a favor. Like, let me see the issue of, say, Professor Mrs., for example. In Senate, we've gone through it. A colleague of mine who said, must address me as Professor Mrs. I said, I'm sorry. Please call me Professor Chioma Kano Agomo. I did not come here because I was a Mrs. And you as the man is not being addressed as Professor Mr. So what's the problem? I remember my son saying, what if they think you are a man? I said, that's your funeral. It's not my own. But that's really the thing, this issue of we must keep her in her place to make her realize that she's here because we've allowed her to be here, but it's not true. And I think it's time, but the problem is that women also were part of our problem. We say it all the time. I always talk about one of my mentors, Professor Jadishola Konde. She was the first female to join the Faculty of Law. Professor Zodike was the second, I was the third. Professor Akonde was leaving the faculty for the institute when I was coming in. But I had the benefit of her calling me, not that I asked for it. I went to ask for an article, but she sat me down to talk to me. Not this way of balancing, the social balancing. She mentioned it. She said, look, you're young. You're coming in, you have a young family. One or two things. You can concentrate on your family and your career will stagnate a little. Or you can concentrate on your family, your career, and your family will suffer. And he said, I advise you, concentrate on your family. And then she made the point, don't listen to women. They will tell you we don't take nonsense from men. But if you go to them accidentally, they are lying down and the man is marching on them. In other words, we say one thing and we do another thing because we are afraid or whatever. We don't want labor. We don't want to be this, that. So the time has come. If that glass ceiling is going to be truly broken. Hirat Balogu told me when I became dean, he said after the inaugural lecture, she couldn't attend, but she came. She said, well, I hope they're listening to all the things you said during the inaugural lecture, but I can tell you the glass ceiling has merely been dented. But that was way back in 2004. So I would like to think that we have come, I don't know how far we have come from 2004 to 2021. But this issue of the social, network is so critical. I would just like to make one correction. Yes, I actually earmarked a room to establish that creche in the Faculty of Law. But because the wife of the VC, Professor Vida Kobe, was there and sensitive, she started the creche at the University of Lagos Women's Society. I said, Prof, this is your idea. I got it from the inaugural lecture. I said, it's even better because the room I had earmarked in the Faculty of Law, which was now turned into administrative common room, would have also not been conducive because the children would be running along the corridors and all that. But she started a proper creche, which is still running today, which has made life easy for women, not just within the university, but within the larger community. So it's important for that social network. Women cannot get away from the multiple role that we play. We cannot get away from it. But without that social support, it discriminates against you because they'll tell you tomorrow you have a child. She's here. I always use her. I always use her as an example. Like she said, I was the first female and she was the second. The time she was coming, I was acting HOD for 42 days because my HOD was on leave. So she came to inquire about the job. When my HOD came back and I said, I've seen somebody we must take. He said, no. She's female, she's single, soon she will marry, and she'll start having children. He says, I'm sorry, sir. We will take this one. So we went back once and forwards. That's the beautiful thing about us in the faculty department. We can argue another, but at the end of the day, we call it superior argument prevails and something. She was employed, but after I read the Royal Act to her. And I said, pregnancy is not a disease. That's what I said to her. And her first child, Kiki, is today himself, is a lawyer. The second one is a medical doctor. The third one is about to enter. And I didn't see her any of the day taking excuse that because she was pregnant or because she was nursing a baby because of all that. Because you realize what you're up against, like we said. So nobody is really doing you a favor. if you must succeed, you must be better than the best. That's what is expected of a woman. So what I'm saying is that those issues are there. We have come somewhere. So we're not really talking about, I agree with my job, it's not about inclusion. It's about addressing those issues, underlying issues, whether we are dealing with the private sector, with the public sector, or the politics, the political sector. Dr. Jibril said, I've known her when I was just coming in. I met her in Kaduna when they used to ask me to facilitate for Nigerian Council of Women's Societies. I met with her somewhere else, you know. So she's been there all this time. And she knows that if people like her could not get there, maybe because they insist on things being done the right way. And of course, you can't get it if you insist on things being done the right way. But somehow, there must have to be a way out. And things like this provide that platform for us to continue.
You have to keep pushing and pushing until the wall comes down. Because it won't just come down. It has to be literally forced down. Professor Monye has been, and I apologize that I almost actually forgot the problem with being online. Could you kindly provide us some reflection on this, especially from the perspective that Professor Agomo has put forth? It is not about tokenism. It's about recognizing that this is value and should just, how do we put it into the sociology of our engagement, that this is not about, let's include, you know, there was a big joke back in those days when, actually it was true, some cynical Republican in the US said, you know, all we have to do is get Sammy Davis Jr. into this cabinet. He's black, he's Jewish, and he's a feminist or something like that. So with Sammy Davis Jr., you cover all the bases of the tokens. How do we get away from this being tokenism and really being a merit-based way of getting optimum outcome from our talent pool?
Okay, Prof, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And not just addressing what Professor Agomo just said, because we're talking about inclusion, or if you view it from the other side, exclusion of women. But of course, that will touch on what Professor Agomo has said. And you know, when you talk about exclusion, we don't have any corporate policy excluding women from jobs, from different things. Or then public policy, there's nothing like that. Women are entitled to vote, are entitled to hold any position of authority. We don't have any constitutional rule. We practice equality before the law. But of course, we cannot deny the fact that there are unwritten obstacles, unwritten rules, if you want to view them as such. Unwritten rules as women should not hold this position, women should not. I mean, if you're an employer and you advertise for a post and maybe you have made up your mind that a woman shouldn't be given the opportunity, that is not a written rule, but if you practice it, of course, you are discriminating against women. But then, who should address these unwritten rules? My colleagues have mentioned a lot of factors, and I don't want to repeat what they said: cultural factors, social factors, and the rest. But then, the question I want to ask, who should address these obstacles, these barriers that inhibit the progress of women? And of course, society should address the community, the government. But I must say that essentially, women should address the obstacles. Women should address the obstacles, because you don't just get right, even human rights, you fight for your rights. In the area of consumer protection, and consumer protection, we know consumers are in the weaker bracket of bargain. If you are bargaining with a manufacturer, with a distributor, of course, you are in a weaker position. But the laws are there. You have to fight. You have to go to court based on those laws. So the same thing we are talking about, women emancipation, women inclusion. Let's even take the theme of this celebration. And before I forget, I must say congratulations to the honorees. They all deserve it. They all deserve. I had to even check up some of their, I had to check up their profile. In fact, they have impressive profile. For Professor Agomo, I didn't have to check her profile. It may interest you to know that she was my supervisor at the PhD level. She was forthcoming ideas, we research materials and others. And if you have a mentor like that, of course, you will do well as a student. And when you finish, whatever place you find yourself, you will do well. So I say congratulations to all of them. Also to the center for choosing rightly. You are we cannot say that any of them does not deserve this award. So, but how do you make yourself, how do you create value? How do you, because you don't just ask people to give you a job because they're a woman. You are looking for that job because you want to add value to the system. If you are the CEO of a job, you must succeed. And if you are a paid employer, you must add value. If you leave the job and nobody feels the impact of your departure from that job, then there's something wrong. First, what do you do to be relevant? You must acquire education. You must read maybe the particular course that you want to practice as a profession. You must read it. I'm not reading it, you read it very well. You don't just, somebody gave the illustration of women coming out in the first class group now, first class category 2-1. And that is the trend now. So you see that women are, making the right impact. So it's not a question of say, yes, I'm a woman, give me the job. That job that you want to do, what does it entail? That's the first question you ask yourself. I will illustrate with my own job, teaching at the tertiary institution. So when you teach at that level, what do you want, must you do to remain relevant? First, you look at the components of the job. Research is the basic thing. Teaching is another important thing. Administration, as time goes on, you cannot run away from administration. You may be appointed the head of your department, dean of your faculty. I've been lucky to handle all those positions. And in fact, as the dean of the faculty, the election was really competitive, and I was elected. I'm not sure that I was elected because of my gender, but because my colleagues believed in me. And having given me that confidence, I had to work hard. And I can say with confidence that my colleagues didn't regret my tenure. So you must research effectively, you must teach effectively. Of course, teaching flows from research. If you have not done a good research, you not teach well. So all these things were coming. And I said that this was coined by in 1948 in a women's conference, breaking the glass ceiling. What is glass ceiling? What is this glass ceiling we are talking about? Barriers, unwritten barriers that inhibit the progress of women. So you must break the glass ceiling as a woman. Don't say that because I'm a woman, I can get this job, I can get. What do you have to put into that job? What do you have to present to the employer at the point of interview? And after the interview, what do you have to add to the job so that your employer will not regret employing you? So I agree with that you should not, because but you should not we don't have any public policy, no corporate policy, no written policy, but you have to break the glass ceiling by showing that you can do it. You must set targets for yourself. You must set goals. You must do things that will an effective contributor to this.
Thank you. I think the technical challenge is probably an appropriate point for us to break. And I will ask the last question because we can go on and on. It's a very important subject. And that question has to do with how we build institutions that are sure that things change. Again, essentially, from my own academic interest perspective, and most of my own work has been around institutions and economic performance. And the person who had some of the greatest lights on that subject, a gentleman called Douglas North, won the Nobel Prize in economics for that work in that area. I remember meeting him at Stanford in 1996, and part of the point that he liked to make without, fail, is that it is the interested parties that their engagement invariably leads to the boundaries that lead to progress, which is what institutions are. One of the reasons I was a great admirer of Chief Khalifa Emi was precisely because he went to court to test many things. And that was one way that you build institutions, by just testing it, just push it. What can interested parties in this particular case do to push the walls down? Perhaps I'll ask Professor Ajogu to start. This is a terrain for lawyers. And then I'll come to Professor Jomi, and then Professor Fabian Ajogu, are you still there?
Yes, thank you very much, Professor. And I would just like to say this. In terms of building new standards, yes, there's importance of testing out situations, but more importantly, celebrating excellence, and which is the key contribution that I see CVL doing. We don't celebrate enough our heroes. Listening to Professor Tom in the beginning, there's clearly, this is not one of those things where there's some jamboree about selection. Anyone who has been close enough to the banking industry will know that Dr. Funke Osibodu has walked the path of excellence, and quietly so, and is a consummate professional. In recognizing her today, yes, we may make her happy and perhaps her family, but we're also telling future generation of bankers that this is what excellence means. This is how you combine your responsibilities, challenges you meet in business ethics, leadership, and this is how, if you walk this path, you will be celebrated come 2040 or so. The courage of Dr. Sarah Jibril, is worthy of celebration. When everyone would rather take the back seat, they've come forward, not minding how many times, but carrying forward. Now, today gives me a very good opportunity to celebrate my teacher, and also mention Professor Moya, who just spoke. They're both my lecturers. And they have produced a whole generation of people who are contributing to society. So testing these things out for me is the CVL way of celebration. And I just like to, Professor, if I have your indulgence, for those who are able to see my screen, I'd like to just mention something concerning the subject. And I call it the sort of relatively subsuming women's excellence. Take a look at this photograph, if you would. You will see some proudly well-dressed Nigerians, again at Oxford in 1935. That was Kofoworola Moore that became Lady Kofo Ademola. Many Nigerians will talk about Sir Ademola, but will not remember that this is the first Black female to graduate from Oxford University in 1935. When we talk about Lady Kofo, it's almost tokenism. She was married to a successful man. But look at that photograph. You will see that she's highly recognized. 1935, 15 years after the whites would give their first female a degree, she got hers. And we must reverse this trend of subsuming women's excellence and appending it to, oh, don't worry, it's because she's attached to this man. The next thing I want to mention is theft of recognition of excellence by women. When a woman succeeds, we tend to find a way to remove it from her success and attribute it to maybe she did some other things. It can't be. Or maybe she's the only woman, we had to recognize one. So it's in a way stealing the excellence they have worked hard for. Again, another illustration from same source. Beniza Bhutto. Everyone thinks she got there because her father died. Therefore, she doesn't deserve anything. Maybe doesn't know anything. It was a top graduate of her time and in the same institution. So we need to be able to stop suppressing the acknowledgement of women. When they have achieved things, let us thumb up and say they achieved it. It's not because she was the only person from Enugu State or Anambra State and we had to give it to someone anyway. So I'd like to, just in case I don't get any other opportunity, congratulate Professor Agomo, Dr. Sibodu, and Dr. Jibril for their contributions in CBL's words to the development of Nigeria and their strategic roles that they have played and continue to play in their respective fields. My parting words, and I really love this expression, is a woman's place is not on the ground, if I add, trampled upon. It is up there. This is what Atinuke Stanley Pepple, a female pilot, said, because she's constantly up there. I had this in my Twitter account, but I won't ask you to try and find it on Twitter, given that you're in Nigeria. I can check Twitter. I am not in Nigeria right now. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, CVL.
Professor Jogu, I want to tell you that even though I've not used my Twitter account for some time, I plan to put up on mine right now. But Utomi, I'm married to Professor Mrs. Ifoma Utomi. I hope that will help. Okay, thank you, Professor Jeremy. Yes. Institutions. How do we view those?
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've been alluding to that in the course of the conversations this morning. But what I'd just like to add to all what has been said already is that the major challenge that we have on ground now is the fact that most of those.
I'm so sorry. Professor Dr. Sarah Jibril is having some technical things. She doesn't speak now. She may not be able to. So if we can, is she able to speak now? So sorry, we'll come right back to you. Okay, are you able to speak now?
Hello?
Okay, go ahead, please. Welcome.
Are they with me? Hello?
Yes,
good afternoon, everybody. Yes, indeed. Again, congratulations to Pastor Utomi and your organization, to my fellow women that have been honored today, along with the audience. I've listened very carefully about all the perspectives being addressed. But I think the whole thing we are discussing about the quality of humanity. And since women and both men are involved in producing human species on the planet Earth, it's just common sense that those who actually go through the biosocial labor or bringing forth human beings, species, it's a negative perspective to see them as people that have been trodden down. And the more a country trodden the women down, it appears they had trodden down the area of bringing up quality human beings. And with all that has been explained and talked about, mine is just that, well, indeed, I believe in the foundation, of course, like all of us did in the family. And in that family, you teach much about the Almighty God that has given everybody life, your role, and how you serve. And in politics, where I came up, and because I'm privileged to have been a daughter of Reverend Philip and Mrs. Philip Dana, and I was taught about the Almighty God, my role, and how I will interact with human beings that God has given life, even giving life to ordinary ants. So whatever we are doing, we are serving, we are doing duty of the God that gave us life to humanity. And therefore, and if I take my normal position as the co-producer of the human species, then my mind, particularly women that have gone through the labor with their breast milk and or their wombs, and are giving blood and are giving their sleeplessness and etc. etc. We will not be sitting there to say we are asking for anything. We would have taught the children to appreciate the role of the woman in every aspect of life. That is a godly, social, psychological, and philosophical principle that maybe will be intensified in areas of learning, particularly when we are talking of philosophy and social psychology, that people will get to know they are important. Human beings, and of course, the first asset, and even by God and all of us. And going to politics, actually, I think I would just simply say, I came into politics realizing the degrading of the human thinking and about human species, particularly the women. The mission was going to politics to re-nurturing Nigeria back to sanity. And therefore, as far as I was concerned, whether somebody felt offended or whatever, it didn't concern me. My husband was busy contributing his life, putting his life on the line for the Nigerian peace. I was putting my own my brain on the line for the sake of humanity, soldiers, everybody else concerned. So when we are focusing on the quality of the human species, and that's why the ethics matter is foundational. And as long as we seem to upgrade the essence of good character or righteousness or ethics in what we are doing at home, at work, at places, at duties, then the nation seems to have been lost into the field of ignorance, godlessness, selfishness, and controversies. So everyone, all of us that are contributing our own quota in every aspect of life that we have been opportunity to serve in, do remember, and God bless you as we put the Almighty God, your creator, first. And are you serving him? We all know that we will die one day. We are concerned of where we are going to end up. And if we do, if part of raising people that know God and are seeking for eternal life or life after death, then it appears we want to mix, we have to foundationally talk of the Almighty God, what he has given us, the talent he has given us, contributing into humanity, again, for the sake in gratitude to the Almighty God has given ourselves, our nation, our families, and even the world. And if that is so, human beings at the focus, the quality of the human species at the focus. Now, common sense tell anyone to say, if you fear God, you will not underrate anybody. because we all have our contributions to make to humanity, even from the family first. So God bless us as we continue in this discussion.
Thank you so very much. I think that the thing that really seals it for me, the point about character. I like to borrow very often from a well-known motto of a school, government secondary school, Owerri, to make this point. Work hard, play hard. When wealth is lost, nothing is lost. When health is lost, something is lost. When character is lost, all is lost. The Nigerian tragedy is a tragedy of a loss of character. And I hope that with people participating in public life and emphasizing such things as she has done, one day we'll realize how we missed the road. Let me return to Professor Jeremy with apologies to continue the conversation around how do we change things? How do we build institutions that will change things?
Thank you very much. I think at this juncture, I'd like to emphasize the importance of diversity. Having in place, a group or groups of people from diverse backgrounds. And when we talk about diversity, I mean, we can look at it from a variety of perspectives in terms of age, for example, in terms of the sexes. So where you have men and women, where you have youths, where you have the differently able, all coming together, each with his or her own unique experiences, unique, knowledge, and all that. I think that can help to build a robust system which fairly caters to everybody. We see countries deliberately having policies that promote or support diversity in their environment. There's a reason for it. So I think that's one area that we really need to look. I gave the example earlier on, and well, she has clarified it. But the bottom line still is that the idea to have a crèche to support women, I have benefited from that immensely. So maybe that's why I keep emphasizing it. Came the first time that we had a woman at the helm of affairs. University of Lagos was established in 1962, and without taking away from the very noble contributions of our forebears and leaders of the university, it was not until women started getting to leadership, positions of leadership, that they started addressing some of the challenges, some of the barriers. Before then, it was just, oh, this is a woman, she'll soon, be going on maternity and all that. But how do you address that thing? Because before the woman even gets one foot in the way anyway, before meeting the person, you look at the qualifications. And if the name and the sex was to be covered or deleted, and you just looked at the qualifications, you may find at the end of the day that more women are even being shortlisted. But there's always that fear that, oh, when the woman gets there, will she be able to cope? And unfortunately, the fears sometimes are justified because of some of the challenges that we have highlighted here today. But having in place, a good support system and an institution or institutional or other framework that is supportive, not just of women, but of youths, of the vulnerable, including the differently abled and all that, will help to add a lot of value to our society. And I think that is one, when women are empowered in that way to give their best, without hindrance, without limitation, then of course, I believe that they will be considered more favorably, when it comes to appointment to positions of leadership. Then we also have to talk about our culture, our environment, the way we perceive things. There's one thing that we always joke around about in my family. Now, we had a situation one day, and we had some people working at the house. My husband works in the building profession. He's an architect. And so he brought some of his workers to the house. He wasn't home, but I was. And then somebody came to the house to look for me, and I was Dr. Oyewumi then. And the person said, good afternoon to the workers. We're looking for doctor. And the workers said to him, doctor has gone out. So they said, but we called, they were speaking Yoruba, so the gender wasn't apparent. But we called now, and she said she was home. Said, don't I know what? I said, doctor has gone out. After, some arguments back and forth, then they said the only person that is home is mommy. It's mommy that is home, doctor has gone out. And I was then wondering that sometimes, they'll call the architect, engineer, or whatever, but when did he become doctor now? In other words, the only person capable of having a title in that house must be the man, not me. I am just mommy, And it's interesting that we even live in the University of Lagos campus. They know I'm the one, who works in the university and all that. But just if you want to see her, you say you want to see mommy. If it's any title, then it's, those kind of yes, events just show that we still have a long way to go in our society, and I think that some of these things are things that we need to continue to have conversations around this, and also to be supportive. You find that even men who are supportive of their wives have to deal also with some form of social perceptions and opinions and all that may not really augur well, for the women. So women are really under a lot of pressure, social pressure, workplace pressure, even economic pressure. At the political front, men want to be the one calling the shots. And even at the time when we say, okay, let's have representation, a fair representation, let's include some women. The men want to be the one to determine which women will get to that position, and not allow the women, or allow, due process, as it were. So how are we going to get there if the men continue to hold, the reins, hold tightly to the reins, either in person or by proxy? I think these are some of the, issues that we really need to have open conversations about, so that ultimately we will get there. We'll have the policies, we'll have the institutions, and everything will turn out fine, at least for this and the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll go to Mrs. Abir to just give us some closing thoughts on this challenge of women. And maybe you focused on entrepreneurship, which is a very important area, and one in which I have spent a lot of time. I meet a lot of very, very bright young women who, in fact, there's this pertinent existing example. Because I've played a role in mentoring quite a number of young people. I mean, like 20 years ago, I asked somebody to identify some of the smartest young people in town. They thought, at least from their perception. They brought them. They included Ifeladru, 2 years, Nia, Desonyas, and I began to, mentor them, work with them, you know. Then another generation was coming up. They came on, it was the Debola Williams, Chude Jidon was. There's a young lady who's just passed, sadly, Nelson, who was part of, there were three that started their group together, the Future Awards and all of that. And you see how, I don't know what exact pressures made her drop out of the trial at some point, but how are we going to ensure that young women entrepreneurs get the support? I see the tech space, they're really doing very well, many of them popping up. What more can we do? How can we build support systems for this?
Thank you, Prof. I think when we talk about gender inclusion, we're basically trying to cover the gender gap that exists in female representation in social, economic, political, and like you've just mentioned, entrepreneurship space. And so I resound very, very, very much with what Professor Fabian said about sharing these stories. I think the reason that we seem to be seeing more women in class now or seeing more women active now is because we're beginning to hear stories of possibilities that women can do these things, as opposed to just growing up and thinking the most that you will do is marry an amazing man and have 5 children, and that's the perfect life for a woman. So I think that we can begin to share more stories like what CVL is doing today. A lot of the women who have been honored today, people may not have heard their stories if you didn't bring it out this much, right? So we need to continue to share the work that women are doing to show the possibilities for the younger generation that are coming. I think one of the very strong things that I would also say is the work that Ms. Thelma Ekio is doing, who I'm humbly representing today, is she has taken a gender lens approach in entrepreneurship. And so what that means is, because normally women entrepreneurs will be seen as high risk, SMENG has gone the extra mile to say, you know what, we're not just going to identify these female entrepreneurs, but we're also going to train them, give them technical assistance, ensure that they are pre-investment ready. And so the risks that people will normally see in these women, we're taking those risks out and ensuring that we're, fundamentally improving the capacities of these women to do more. And so we need more organizations like this to come up. We need more people like this to come up. Women, men who have been in the entrepreneurship space years before, to begin to share their stories, to begin to share their skills and the experiences to help more women coming up. I think one of the very important things to me is, I keep saying, even when we're talking about mentorship for female entrepreneurs, we don't only want female entrepreneurs as their mentors, because there's so many things that male entrepreneurs deal with that we women don't deal with, right? And it's easy for me to be in a room and have a conversation with a man because I've been mentored by a man and I know what to watch out for, I know what to say, I know what to see, right? So we're not just asking for women entrepreneurs who have been there to come in as mentors, but we're also asking for what they'll call he for she's. We need more he for she's in the country, to begin to come out and share their stories and help women. Because if we think through one of the ways in which gender equality can be achieved, I think fundamentally entrepreneurship is one of the very strong tools in which we can do it. And so if we continue to ensure that, women entrepreneurs get as much support, as they need. Of course, when you empower a woman, you empower a nation. That's like a very strong saying. At the end of the day, when a woman wins, the whole humanity wins. It's not just about her, because she's going to be touching everyone around her. So we need to just create more support, share more stories, help to de-risk women, as what we see today, and just continue to, just throw that kind of support behind. One of the things that we're also doing is ensuring that we're creating different areas of access for women. And so one of the things is also creating access to finance. We're ensuring that so we need to continue to teach these women so I've had conversations with female entrepreneurs and they tell you, I don't want 5 million, just give me 100,000. It's okay. They're not even open enough to think big, right? And so because of that, you realize that a lot of women entrepreneurs remain in the small sector. They are afraid to even move because they haven't seen people who have done it. They haven't seen the opportunities to do it. So for me, it will be more around this. Let's just try to create more structure. We need more people. We need more organizations like CVL to come up. We need more people like Professor Patitomi to come up. We need more people like Ms. Thelma Ekio who are doing these things and showing that, this is actually possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll take the last word on this from Ms. Adekoya. Mentoring. How do we get young women to focus on women like you and learn from the track that you have traveled and how that will make a difference?
Thank you, Prof. I think it's all been said, actually. Um, Showcasing the women who have walked that walk and showing that it is possible. I started by saying I was a pessimist. A pessimist is an optimist with experience. I think I want to move from that position to say I am a realist. I think the change we are looking for, the shattering of the glass ceiling can happen, especially because it's happening in the economic sector. My disappointment is in the political sector. But as the economic sector changes and there's more control in the hands of women, they have a greater opportunity of influencing the political sector. And therefore, what we as women must do is to encourage other women to go into the political sector, to show that, as Dr. Sarah Jibril has done, you can be a politician with ethics. Walk the walk, talk the talk, and shatter that women don't like women don't support women, which men tell us to keep us from being united. As far as the legal profession is concerned, I think what women can do is, as Professor Tomi, you said, keep on pushing that envelope. Challenge the statements, the political statements, the positions that are not based in law. And let's see how we can break down those barriers that have no legal basis, that stop women from achieving their full potential, whether in the economic space, but for me, more importantly, in the political space.
Well, thank you all so very much. In many ways, I feel very blessed and very well located today. Most of the names that just kept coming out because of comments by people were people that we were close to, very close to, actually. Back in those days, the Akondes, Professor Jadishola Akonde and her husband, we all used to go to church in Surulere, and we were very, very friendly. So I was happy to hear the comment said I made today about how, of course, the Bidakubes were very, very good friends of ours. Also, we used to have a place where we all tended together and all of that. Seeing these people being regular people who have made a difference should be an encouragement that each one of us can affect our space and make a huge difference. I think part of the big problem is that many times we are thinking there are some people there who can change the world. But you, me, I can do something to affect that space around me. I am privileged to have 3 daughters, 2 sons. I don't think it's ever crossed my mind to think of a son differently than I think of a daughter. Never, never crossed my mind. Just never. And they also know it. Even in apportioning things, you take, everybody gets their own equal share approach. So if we begin to affect the world around us like that, perhaps these things will change. I find it a shame sometimes that most of the women who succeed in Europe don't have any children. This is another point that is coming. It's like, I don't want to deal with these problems. I want to just focus on succeeding. But it is possible to succeed while keeping this balance that God has given us for the advance of the human community. And I'm particularly proud of my wife that she's done a pretty good job of it. And so I would like us to move on to celebrate these extraordinary women and to the next stage of the program where we give them the CVL honor, and then we cut a cake in celebration of honorees. And so can we get the plaques and make the presentations? Mr. Shubru's son is here, so he's going to come up and represent her and receive the plaque on her behalf. And Dr. Sarah Jibril, we can have hers received for her and then transmitted, not virtually, but physically. So thank you for the quality conversation. This is going to be on YouTube, so it can help people further reflect on this subject, because this is really why we do it. We want a new narrative to develop and keep telling these stories. As I kept saying about Mr. Oshibodu, I have deliberately told her story. MBA students are sick and tired of my telling them her story through the years. And I'm glad that many of them heard the story and that it has probably affected some of them. I think that we owe it as a duty to all of us, to our future. We say that it takes a woman, I guess it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a woman to change society, because the women have the most direct, immediate influence on the children. Perhaps getting the right women with the right accomplishments to make those children immediately feel a particular way about the world around them is what will make our world a different and a better world. And I think the team may be okay. Can they hear me? It's time to come forward. Okay, right, lovely. So allow me to invite who's okay. Yes, please come forward there, please. So we'll start with Mrs. Oshibodu. Okay. All right. So on behalf of the Center for Values in Leadership, we present this award of excellence to an exceptional leader in recognition of your outstanding contributions and legacy as a pioneer leader in banking and power sectors. This is presented at the 52nd CVL Leader Without Title Leadership Tribute Colloquiums to Mrs. Funke Oshibodu. Okay. All right. So, Professor Chioma Agomo. Generations of students of law at the University of Lagos have talked about you. I've had the privilege of interacting with you in the past around with the U.S. International Visitors Leaders and the Full Gospel. It is a great honor and privilege and pleasure to present you this award of excellence, exceptional leader. And then perhaps you can receive for Mrs. Dr. Sarah Jibril. So we'll give it to Anguli on her behalf. Okay. So Mrs. Sarah, Dr. Sarah Jibril, Award of Excellence for an exceptional leader in recognition of your outstanding contributions and legacy as a pioneer leader in public service and politics. This 52nd CVL Leader Without Title Leadership Tribute Colloquium. Oh. Thank you. I think we should just pop this in tribute. Success is usually greeted with the pop of bottle. Even though part of what I teach is that organizations can become bubble organizations. That means you pop up and everything is looking down instead of looking forward. So this is in terms of celebrating learning from yesterday. Oh, fine. Oh, okay. For they are jolly good fellas. For they are jolly good fellas. For they are jolly good fellows. And so sing all of us. Hooray! Hooray! For they are jolly good fellows. They are jolly good fellows. For they are jolly good fellows. And so say all of us. I think we're supposed to cut this cake. So I was skipping and jumping. Okay, you have yours, eh? Yes. Yeah, okay, okay. Yes. Also, I got more in the middle representing all three of them. Please, let's join that. Yeah, yes, please. Madam. No, everybody. Everybody. Okay, thank you. Oh, okay. Okay. So, um, I usually like something not traditional, not going to the usual JESUS or something. Oh, okay. CVL sounds like it. Okay, so the spelling of CVL. So C V now. Thank you. Okay. Maurice, and we know that it might be a challenge. Let's start playing one, but they are available on YouTube. Yeah, okay. The documentaries will be available on YouTube, but we can begin playing one now and then close. And those who can watch will continue watching, and then we can all follow on YouTube.
In 1977, my name is Chuma Kanwagomo. I was born 70 years ago, according to my father, in Amedugu, Mba. My name is Chuma Kanwagomo. I was born 70 years ago, according to my father, in Amedugu, Mba, Abia State, the Bende local government of Abia State. My father was at one time editor of West African Pilot. Then he became the director of Zig's group of newspapers, the Eastern Nigerian Guardian Assembly Zig group of newspapers. Eventually, he became one of the pioneer staff of Shell. When Shell opened its doors in Nigeria, he rose to become the first Black executive director to sit on the board of Shell. But I was brought up in the village because my mother and my father were separated in 1954 when I was about 3 years old. I was brought up by my maternal grandmother. So I grew up in the village. I received my primary education in the village. The village life as I knew it was one that I still relish and think about with nostalgia, because I grew up in a society where value was, when you talk of value, that's responsibility, accountability, integrity, uppermost. As a growing child, you're everybody's responsibility. You could be disciplined by any of the elders without your parents raising an eyebrow. In fact, you'll be punished double if you dare to complain something. And people could put their wares out. You pick it and drop your penny or whatever it is, and nobody will take it. That's the type of society I grew up in. And I was a member of the choir. I grew up in the church. I was born in the church. I was a member of the choir from primary, and I was in primary school. I attended Sunday school. And then from there, I went to Methodist Girls Secondary School, Ovim. I was in Ovim from 1963 to 1967 when the Nigerian Civil War broke out. I was already in Form 5, then looking forward to taking the West African School Certificate examinations, but we were sent home. And so became refugees for 3 years, but life-transforming events that impacted and I believe shaped who I am today was the loss of my elder brother, the first son of the family, my immediate elder brother. He was 19 years old, 19 plus, 19 and a half. He was in upper 6, and I call them the wasted generation. He wanted to be a lawyer. He was already acting it. People in the village regarded him as a lawyer. He grew up with my father in the town, together with stepmom's children. So, but he never.
Story. We'll take another 4-5 minutes of Mrs. Oshibodu's story, and then Mrs. Sarah Jibril's, and then we can all then continue watching it on YouTube.
Born in Lagos, schooled in Lagos. I'm from Lagos State. I'm a Lagosian. My primary school was in Obalinde and Tayo Preparatory School. From there, I went to secondary school in Holy Child College, also in Obalinde. My life in Holy Child College was a very formative year because I was in a Catholic school, discipline. The discipline during those formative years continued thereafter. From Holy Child College, I went to my university of Ife, graduated BSc Social Sciences, Economics. And that period also was instructive because it was a period where, unlike schooling now, you had flexibility, but our own period was a period of you must pass all your subjects, otherwise you don't move to another class. There was a period of fail one, repeat all. That's what it was called at that time. So again, the value system in terms of emphasis on education was very strong at that time. From the university, I did my NYSC. I did my NYSC in Lagos and in 2 locations. First in a secondary school. That secondary school, the discipline and the seriousness instilled in me is still applicable till today. It was in a boys' secondary school, Methodist Boys High School, on Broad Street. At that time, the school is no longer present there. And I was teaching the senior class. The senior class being what you call HSC and final class. When you are teaching at that level, you are teaching senior boys, and here is a skinny young lady teaching senior boys. What it did was to instill the, what should I call it, ability to hold my head up against all odds, because boys will always be boys. They will make fun of you, jest at you, and you have to still instill that seriousness in them at that stage. But there was another hidden gem during that period, which was the school also had adult education, which no longer exists today. So you see, in daytime, I have young people who, well, some take school as serious, but most don't take it as serious. They just take it as a right. And in the evening, because most of us, we have to participate in the adult education, you see people who are working or who still want to have their GCE and pass so that they can go into higher education. And these are older people, some 30, 40, 50. So daytime, you are teaching people who are far under 20. And nighttime, you are teaching people who are far above, in the range of 40, 50. Those are were very serious with their work. And they took going to school, and not as a right, but a privilege that they must not miss. Again, that taught me that life is not always easy.
My name is Dr. Mrs. Sarah Jibril. I am from Kwara State. My home tribe or ethnicity is Nupe, and I am the Jakadia Nupe, that is Mother Royal or Mother Ambassador Royal for all the Nupes worldwide. I work with the Nupe, Brigadier General Dr. Yahaya Nipe. I come from a Christian home, and I believe in the values I was taught. And my primary school was in Patigi, my local government. My parents are Reverend and Mrs. Philip Ghana. My mother's name is Mrs. Hawau Esther Ghana, from the village called Tampafu, 5 kilometers from Patigi Township in Kwara State. I attended SIM Primary School, now Ekwa Primary School, and I attended Elizabeth Secondary School in Ilorin for 5 years. I enjoyed myself. I was fortunate to have very good principals and teachers. I suddenly realized I was talented in sports. So I participated as a sprinter while being a class prefect, and then later became the house prefect because of the activities I was engaged in. And suddenly I had young ones becoming my friend. So happy that I was carrying them along to go and play, to practice sports, particularly the game called netball, which has been overtaken by basketball. But that was a very interesting game. I was very good at it, I think, to the point that my teacher wrote something that I was an exhibitist player. My parents didn't like it because they thought it was seen negatively. Why would I be playing to show off? That taught me a lesson that whatever I was going to do in life is to be modest and humble, no matter how good I am at it. I finished and I went to Dartford College of Education for my diploma in education. And that was where I learned, first of all, how to learn how to swim and to be able to win my first bronze medal before I would become a teacher in swimming, including other sports activities. I had to learn to swim and then swim Olympic length swimming pool 21 times non-stop. When I achieved that, I felt I was fulfilled that I was able to do that, to swim 21 times non-stop of the Olympic size pool. That helped me as I learned other skills in playing hockey, and again, netball and basketball, particularly teaching the physical things and applying the psychology that works in the human being, and also in the area of gymnastics. I graduated and came back to Nigeria, but before I came back during the holidays, since I had scholarship, I worked at the Nigerian embassy as a telephone operator. For a while, that linked me back home with our diplomats, and that was quite interesting. But one thing I would know that if you didn't know anything and you were new, you could have disappointments. So I decided I was going to work there one summer holiday. So I went to a new company, and by that time, as of before 70, it was 1967 to 70, I was in Britain. So one of those summer holidays, going to a new company, they had started using a digital telephone kit. And the woman taught me for about half an hour. So I thought I could make it. And indeed, I made some few mistakes, and she felt that I couldn't cope with the job. So after 1 hour of my employment, I was sacked. So when I felt I could learn, but she said, Sarah, this needs our continuity in our work. And if you learn the skill, you could always come back. So I left disappointed, but that was a lesson in my mind that I must have to get skills. I joined Ahmadu Bello University, and at the branch of the universities, we had Advanced Teachers College of Education. It was strange that as a woman, as a young lady, unmarried, I was teaching sports and gymnastics. And I think
the chat, but it's youtube.com/CVLNG. I do want to thank everybody who has participated online and physically, and to say that it's been for us a very, very heartwarming opportunity to celebrate some very worthy people and to begin to push the narrative in a direction that will advance the common good of all of us. And I pray that our country will get better when our best talents, no matter the gender, take charge of making our country become what it was destined to be, a light for the black man in the world. Thank you all. God bless. We are praying. We don't have to make it loud. Everything prayer. Everything prayer. Yes. Oh, okay, photograph. All right. Can we get I don't want us to be in a photograph situation? Yeah. Just together, yeah. Okay. Very nice one. I actually wished him to go into everybody abandoned. Very nice to meet you. And he was staying at this guest house, ACD, old ACD guest house on Bungalow. And when I would stop by there, I couldn't meet people.
Prof, congratulations once again. Thank you. And we are waiting for the invitation from the
Yes, now.
Yes, I know.
Celebrated for 1 year.
didn't give us opportunity to say
Oh dear.
our own sides.
Oh dear, I'm so sorry.
I hope